G'day everyone at home. Senator Ralph Babet here for the United Australia Party. I'm here with Hobart City Councillor Louise Elliott, who has been facing quite a bit of persecution, in my personal opinion, lately. But what has she done? Let's find out. And before we start, I want to say that Louise has the courage and the determination that we should expect from every single one of our elected officials in our great country. Louise? Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Firstly, at the moment, I'm not actually allowed to use the title councillor.
Why not?
I've been suspended from my role with the Hobart City Council for a period of 30 days, and I'm 1 week into that, and I've appealed the decision. But basically, the suspension relates to a breach of a code of conduct against me. I can't talk too much about that, but what I can say is that I guess I'm another example of a worrying trend where local government representatives in particular are being gagged and hamstrung around what they can and can't say. And the bar is getting lower and lower to the point where I think it's really gone too far and elected officials can't actually represent their community.
Worrying trend in Australia, I think. And we'll get to that. But before we get to that, tell me a bit about your background. Who are you in your role outside of being a former councillor, if you want to put it like that?
Yes, so I'm Hobart born and bred. I've been here all my life, apart from a few years in London. I'm a HR manager by trade, 2 young kids, a busy mum, basically. Yep. And it was actually COVID that got me into local government. The meetings went online and I started to think, oh my gosh, is this what's happening in our city, in the city I love, and is this the decision makers?
Is COVID what led you to run for council?
COVID was the mechanism that I guess made the meetings more accessible. I wouldn't go down on a Monday night and sit in the chamber, but I could look at YouTube and see what was happening in the city. And it was the issue around housing availability and rents going high. And I'm thinking, well, where's the supply? And the common denominator was that all housing in Hobart goes through the council. So it was housing that got me into that. And then I started to see the rest of the agenda and the decisions and the debate. And I thought, my choices are to either never pay another rates bill again or to stand for council. Yep. And so I had no choice but to stand for council.
So how long have you been a councillor for now?
Nearly 18 months. So it's been a very eventful 18 months. Busy, but I feel like I'm doing an important job.
Yep. Representing your community and the people who put you there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's 12 people on council for a very good reason, because it's a diverse range of people out there, especially in Hobart City. We have people at both ends of the political spectrum and a heap in the middle. And of course, not everyone out there will agree with what I have to say, the same way they don't agree with some of my colleagues. But I think that it's really important that people, from my perspective, I think that I speak for the people who are grounded in reality, they're common sense, they want value for their rates, and they believe in the values of fairness and transparency and democracy.
So, perfect segue, what do you see as the primary role of a councillor?
At the local government level, I think it's, when you say broadly, is to represent the community, but at the local government council level, it's delivering public value for the rates that people pay. Thousands of dollars people hand out every year to go to quality services, really tangible things from my perspective. And as a capital city, I get concerned that ratepayer money is chewed up in political activism and things like that. When walking around, I walked every street letterboxing. There's people that pay, $1,000 in rates and they don't have a footpath. We need aquatic centres, we need, roads and the fundamentals, the playgrounds. Yeah,
back to basics.
Exactly.
Instead of pursuing, from what I can see in some of my councils in the Melbourne area, woke agendas, like putting up all sorts of different sexually based flags and things like that, spending millions on these kind of things.
I want to talk about some of the woke stuff that they'll highlight too, Christy, and when it comes to local government, Victoria keeps putting up some great examples. Let's look at the Yarra Council and their new policy on flags. They're flying a vast array of flags, anything but the Australian flag, it seems. The council policy now says the following flags are flown on our civic flagpoles throughout the year. The aromantic flag, that's for people who are not interested in sex, apparently. The asexual flag, the bisexual flag. The Brisbane Lions Footy Club, fair enough. Collingwood Footy Club. The Eureka flag. The flag of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, apparently a country that isn't officially recognised. The flag of the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, the intersex flag, intersex inclusive pride flag, the lesbian pride flag, the Morning Star flag, the non-binary pride flag. I mean, What's going on in your part of the world, Christy? What's wrong with the Australian flag?
getting out of control.
Absolutely. That's definitely the case in Hobart, and we have, the revision of history. There's a case at the moment before the tribunal for a planning decision to pull down a statue.
I saw that.
That the Hobart City Council paid, that the Hobart community paid for back in the 1800s.
Two stories on mistreating heroes. There is now a legal appeal, this is the first one, to stop an outrageous attack on our history, to stop Hobart City Council from tearing down the statue of a Premier, William Crowther, who was a Premier in the 19th century in Tasmania, also a prominent surgeon. The council said Crowther had to go because he'd souvenired the skull of an Aboriginal man and sent it to London's Royal College of Surgeons. But it seems those claims are fake, or at least unproven. Crowther denied taking the skull, the college denied receiving it. But who cares about the truth, right? It was enough that people identifying as Aboriginal had accused him of being a skull-stealing racist, and the council caved. But that decision to remove the statue is now on hold after several people lodged a planning tribunal appeal.
And the council I'm part of has voted to pull that down. So that decision's
Terrible.
under appeal and it'll be heard later in February.
Hopefully that goes the way of common sense and that statue stays up, because I believe that we can look at our history, understand what happened. Maybe some of it isn't perfect, but it's still our history and we should never try and erase it. Because when you start to erase history, you're doomed to repeat it. We should learn from it. My next question for you is, now I understand that we've been talking about it at the beginning of this interview, that there was some controversy around you attending a rally, speaking at a rally last year. Now, what was the theme of that rally for people who haven't seen the footage?
Yeah, so I spoke at a women's rights event that was held outside Parliament House in Hobart back in March, and Kelly J. Keane was attending. She attended other capital cities around Australia.
I did try to speak to more of the trans activists to hear their side, but all I got was aggression, demented hate and bile, and disgusting insults we can't play on a family program. But here's a taste that we can show you of what I'm talking about.
Sky News! Sky News! Racist, homophobic, transphobic, piece of spineless you! Yeah, you laugh. You laugh.
And Hobart came not long after
I remember
the Melbourne
she was
event.
in Canberra as well, and I was in attendance there.
Yes, good to hear. And in Melbourne, there was a situation with that resulted in
Deeming.
Moira's completely
Expulsion from the Liberal
appalling
Party.
treatment. That's right.
That rally was a nasty, hateful event.
So Hobart was after Melbourne, so the heat was high.
My name is Louise, and I'm speaking in my personal capacity as a woman and a mother. Like many of you, I'm being name-called, attacked, bullied by people whose views are different to mine. Ironically, those calling names and attacking are those who preach kindness, acceptance, tolerance and inclusion the loudest.
So it was really an opportunity for the women to stand up and have their say around whatever the matter might be, but predominantly related to women's rights. And a key theme was the cross-section between trans people's desire to be seen as a woman versus the need for single-based sex spaces, sports facilities, that sort of thing. So around, say, 30 to 50 local Tasmanians assembled in Parliament House lawns. We had one quadrant of the Parliament House lawns and the trans rights activists had another quadrant. They were meant to obviously be kept apart. So as soon as the event started and people started speaking, the local Tasmanian people, as I said, there was only really a few dozen. We had hundreds of people basically come across to our space outside of their permit area and encroach closer and closer and closer and push us up towards the Parliament House
I actually
door.
saw the footage, and we'll splice some in here right now. Atrocious.
Yes.
It was a display in vulgarity. It was horrible to watch, and I don't know how anyone at home could have watched that footage and thought that it was okay what they did to you.
It was completely not okay. We ended up squeezed against the front of Parliament House with only 30 centimetres, if that, between a bunch of, to be frank, a lot of people were middle-aged and older women, and myself and others were trapped by these this really aggressive and rabid mob. I'd never seen mob behaviour until that day, and we were pushed against Parliament House, trapped physically. You couldn't leave if you wanted to, and people were screaming at close proximity that you literally couldn't hear properly for 2 days afterwards. And in the front line of that mob were two Greens politicians, Tasmanian Greens, Cassie O'Connor and Rosalie Woodruff.
They're fake feminists who are playing footsies with Nazis, and they should be condemned.
They were in the front screaming with the mob at us and egging them on. From the front windows of Parliament House, there was half a dozen or a dozen politicians looking down at us. I was begging.
Did they do anything?
No,
They just watched on?
I was begging. I was pretty much the only person there that held any office, even though I was in my personal capacity. I had women coming to me with tears in their eyes, saying how scared they were. I was begging the police, can you please do something, get some safe distance here. People were being pushed, people were spat on, people were seriously abused right in their faces. It was horrendous behaviour, and this was people who just wanted to have their quiet event, assemble, speak, go home. The protesters could have stayed in their space, they could have kept a respectful distance. What they proved to us is that women have something to fear, because I had never seen such behaviour, and my view of Hobart actually changed that day, and definitely not for the better. I didn't think Hobart was capable of something like that. It was terrifying and it was wrong, and I had the behaviour owned on the quiet. Like, I had some people contact me from the organisation that organised the protest rally and say that shouldn't have happened, you had a right to be heard, but they never publicly came out and condemned the behaviour of their protesters.
Now, were any of these protesters eventually charged or arrested or taken away by the police for what they were doing to you?
No, absolutely not. No, there was no consequence. From my perspective, it was pretty clear that the police had been given a message to only intervene if all hell breaks loose, and to not.
From what I saw, it looked like all hell had broken loose.
It could have gotten even worse. It was on a knife's edge, and that's why I went out of my way to make sure that I expressed my serious concerns with the Minister for Police after that event. That should never have happened. Women were not protected. The attendees had a right to have some sense of safety attending that event. It was terrible for democracy and free speech. And it's a silencing intimidation tactic, which actually the UN Special Rapporteur on women and children and the protection of violence against them has condemned that exact behaviour. And we've really had a handful, if any, politicians that have actually come out and said in Tasmania that was completely wrong and shouldn't have happened.
Okay, now I've actually got some bits from your speech here, and I'm going to read from it verbatim for people at home to really understand what you said, and then we can talk about the hot water that you're in now because of these things which you said. So you said, trans women are trans women and remain biological men. You also said, it is completely understandable that women would want spaces for females only, especially vulnerable spaces like change rooms, toilets and showers. You said, it is an absolute insanity that we have a law that allows a man at 10 a.m. to declare that he's a woman and by 11 a.m. be sharing change rooms and showers with young girls. Then you said, it is unsafe and unfair for biological men to compete in women's sporting categories, especially after puberty and in physical sports. Now, many people at home watching this would agree with you. They'd agree with all these things that you said, and they'd probably also say that, hey, it's not that controversial.
No.
So why do you think you're being investigated for saying common sense things?
Well, that's exactly it. So a couple of months after that speech, where I gave my fair and valid opinion that most Australians agree with, absolutely, I had a letter to say I was being investigated for inciting hatred on the basis of gender identity.
So
One
you had a
person
formal
had
complaint?
lodged a complaint. Yes.
A formal complaint lodged against you. And where was that complaint lodged?
I received it in May after the March event, and the Anti-Discrimination Commissioner in Tasmania had deemed that it was worth investigating, that I had indeed incited hatred on the basis of gender identity. I mean, that's a really serious thing to be
Inciting hatred
accused
for
with.
saying things like it's unfair and it's unsafe for a man to compete against a woman in sports after puberty, and it's unsafe to say things like women need their own spaces with other women.
Yes. I
Absolute madness.
also said that the vast majority of trans and gender diverse people are very decent people.
Yes.
I I mean, my speech is based on fact, undeniable fact that we all knew until a few minutes ago, and also my fair and valid opinion. There is absolutely no incitement of hatred in there whatsoever. So this is a really important case. This is about nationwide, really. A lot of people are looking at this because it is so obvious that I have done nothing wrong. I've spoken the truth and my fair opinion, and it has cost me thousands and in dollars and in stress. And so where things are at the moment is that basically the Commissioner has escalated the matter to the Tasmanian Tribunal, so a date's going to be set for that.
So you'll potentially have to appear at a tribunal and defend yourself for saying really basic, simple things that most people would agree with.
I mean, given the magnitude of what I've received, I've had to lawyer up, which is unfortunate, and they don't come cheap. I've spent thousands on that already. So yes, we'll be in front of tribunal because, I mean, this is absurd. My gripe is not with the person that made the complaint. My gripe is with the Equal Opportunity Tasmania, the Commissioner's Office, for accepting the complaint. Our taxpayer money is funding me being investigated for saying the truth.
For saying the truth.
Yes.
It's actually quite shocking. So what does the future look like for you? How far are you prepared to take this battle?
I'll take it as high as we need to, because I've done absolutely nothing wrong. And if it's not me, it'll be me again in a year's time. It'll be someone else.
Or somebody like you.
Absolutely.
That just wants to speak the truth. And that's very important. People have to speak. And if they can silence you, someone elected to represent their community, they can silence anyone. So it's very important for you to keep up this fight. So do you think that there's a chance that you'll end up in the High Court?
There's a chance. I'm hoping that common sense will prevail, and that the case will be dismissed and thrown out by the tribunal, mainly because, I mean, I'm prepared to take the fight, but I don't want taxpayer money wasted on this. This is absurd. And but regardless of how it plays out, it has to be resolved, because we can't keep having this debate, and we can't keep having free speech, which is so blatantly fair, you know, so blatantly nothing wrong with it, being the noose tighter and tighter around that. We need to push back. All of the sane, reasonable people in Australia have to push back on this madness.
How much do you think this might end up costing you from start to finish? Just
ballpark it. So far, it's $6,000 of my personal money has been spent to date. I've got a ballpark figure of close to $30,000 for tribunal.
Not a small amount.
No. And other cases, you know, on other individuals, academics and things like that have had to go to the High Court, it's $1 million. Like, it's insane figures. So I'm not hoping it doesn't come to that, but I mean, I know that so many people are behind me, not only in Australia, but across the world. So I know I'm not alone.
Yeah. So are you well paid for being a counsellor? Is it going to cover all of this expense?
No, not even close. And this is also in my personal capacity. So
you're paying for all of this yourself at the moment?
Completely.
There's no support from the government as such with any legal aid or anything like that right now?
I haven't gone to legal aid. This is all completely out of my own pocket. Let's put it this way. I am at a net loss being a counsellor.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. You do this because you want to make a difference, not because there's a big paycheck.
Yeah.
So are you raising funds to defend yourself at the moment?
Yes, I am. I've got a GoFundMe, and also people can donate through my own website. Which is www.louiseelliott.org. If they Google Louise Elliott Hobart,
we'll put it on the screen at the bottom.
Thank you. Yeah. I've raised close to $15,000 already, which is excellent, and I really appreciate the generosity of people, and which again is a sign that people care about this. A lot of people know how important it is. But on the other side, there's a lot of people out there that don't realise just how much our laws are being weaponised, and just how crazy the world has gone in terms of having things like, you know, men on top of women's sporting podiums, women in prisons having to be on contraception because they're getting pregnant in the female prison, things like that. So, yeah.
So what sort of emotional toll has this taken on you and your family? Has it been hard?
It's stressful, but to be honest, I've had much more stressful experiences than this in my life. About 7 years ago, I was diagnosed with a very angry and aggressive cancer, and there was a very good chance I wasn't going to be here. I only had a 5-month-old baby at the time. So I know what a bad day is, and facing this and being suspended is not a bad day. That's just one foot in front of the other from my perspective. I, from that experience, had a bit of an awakening, I guess, and thought, well, you don't live forever. I want to make a difference, however small, in the world. And if I see an injustice or see something that I think needs to be said, then I'm going to bloody do it.
Yeah. And if only there were more people like you, I think the country would be in a better place.
Thank you.
Yeah. So have any acts of violence been directed towards you or your family or your friends or anything like this?
Yes, I do get I get a lot of vandalism. I mean, election time, I was up at 5 a.m. every morning replacing signs and removing messages from my signs.
I mean, graffiti and things
yes,
like
yeah,
this?
horrible messages. And
any abuse on social media?
Oh, yes, but it's far outweighed by the positive support, and that's what the block button's there for, really. I mean, I do have things, you know, I've got my name in my car and I get...
That's brave.
Yes, it is,
Very
especially
brave.
in Hobart. I get lipstick across my car with hateful messages in it. I get my letterbox ripped off at my house.
Simply because you decided to speak up for women's rights. I mean, who would have thought in 2024?
Yes, from the Be Kind Brigade, let's as well.
From the people that
Yep.
preach tolerance and we're so kind, look at us,
Yep.
those kind of people.
Yeah, and from the people that want to be in women's vulnerable spaces that are really no harm to anyone, yet they'll go out of their way to you know, they're very thinly veiled threats. It's vandalism. It's intimidation.
It is a threat. It's a clear threat.
Yes.
Yeah. So have you received any support from local, state or federal parliamentarians specifically? Has anyone stood in your corner?
Few and far between, but I really appreciate the people that have. People like Senator Claire Chandler,
yes.
and yourself,
Yep.
and Senator Dunniam.
Yep.
Alex Antic?
Correct.
Senator Antic.
Yes.
And David Limbrick, the Libertarians, they obviously understand this sort of thing as well. But I really respect the people that do that, because it takes bravery to do it, because you get punished. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, there's a lot of people...
They're using lawfare against you is what they're doing. They're dragging you through the process. I mean, you may, God willing, you may beat the accusation at the end,
Yep.
but you will not beat the ride.
No.
And that's what they do to you.
Yeah, and the tarnish that's left behind. Yes.
Besmirching your good name, basically.
Yeah, completely. With really no justifiable cause, and putting you through the absolute ringer. And like I said, the complaint that I'm under shouldn't have been accepted in the first place.
Yes.
The bar
It
should
should
have
be
been
thrown out.
stopped there.
So do you think your case represents a direct threat to freedom of speech, what they're trying to do to you now? Will this have a clear chilling effect on other women or other people anywhere in anything that decide to speak truth to power?
It already has had a chilling effect on people. I mean, I get people message me and inbox me and donate and say, thank you for what you're saying, because I can't. I will lose my job. I will lose my family association. Or people are already silenced. So God forbid it's found that this is inciting hatred. I truly believe it won't be, because I know the world's a bit crazy, but I don't think it's absolutely
It's not that
lost
crazy
plot
yet.
at the High Court or whatever level. But yeah, it is something that I think was unfathomable only a handful of years ago, that someone saying what we know to be biological truth, someone saying, hold on, if we let men into women's vulnerable spaces and sports, then that there's some safety, fairness and dignity risks with that could be somehow land you in such serious hot water. It is absolutely an absolute assault on free speech. And the bar is set so low that, yeah, I really have to shake my head.
Stating biological truth is now seen as potentially hate speech.
Yes.
Absolute madness.
Yes.
Now, our Prime Minister, Miss Albanese, he stated recently in an interview with Piers Morgan that a woman, and I quote, is an adult human female. That's what he said. Now, it appears to me, on the outside, that your opinion aligns perfectly well with Miss Albanese's definition of what a woman is there. Now, why do you think it's okay for a man to make these comments, our Prime Minister, but when you make them as a woman, you're hounded down? How is that okay?
It's a very interesting question. I don't know the answer to that one. What I do wonder is how big the asterisk is next to that definition and that response that Mr. Albanese gave. And if he feels that way, why doesn't he come out and say, I'm not the only person experiencing this? You know, there's Kirley Smith, there's Sal Grover, there's obviously Moira Deeming, who's done nothing wrong,
yep.
obviously.
Booted from her own party.
Yeah,
Yep.
Disgusting,
Didn't do
absolutely. From the
anything at all.
Liberal Party of
Yep.
all places.
From the party of free speech and freedoms and the right to speak your mind. That
Yes,
party.
I mean, that reflects appallingly on the Victorian Liberals, because that should absolutely have not occurred. But in terms of Mr. Albanese's comment, he should then come back and say, hold on, there's all these cases in Australia where women and other individuals are being absolutely persecuted and put through the ringer. This needs to stop.
Yep.
And that's not Australian, that's not democratic, that's not diversity, inclusion, kindness.
So tell us more about the sex self-ID laws, and I hear that you're taking the council to court as well.
Yes, that's right. So in terms of the sex self-ID laws, a handful of years ago, Tasmania passed the laws, which other states have followed, which basically mean that any moment, a man can say that, oh, I feel like a woman, I am a woman. And he
Just like that?
Yeah.
So he just walks into a building,
no
signs
surgery,
a form? Or
no medical intervention.
doctors or anything?
No, anything. And if you were to ask for that, you're a bigot.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what it means is, in practical terms, is that, a man can decide he's a woman at any time. He can then go and be in the female change rooms with my young daughter after swimming. He can then go and compete in the women's sports.
Does he have to undertake any surgery or anything like
Nothing.
this? Any feminisation procedures? No. A man like me could walk into a building one day, sign a form and say, I'm a woman now, just like that.
Yes.
Controversial legislation that will make it possible for people to change the gender on their birth certificate in line with their personal identity. Under the Births, Deaths and Marriages Registration Bill, people as young as 16 will be able to apply to change the sex on their birth certificate with just a statutory declaration. No sex change surgery required.
And it is happening. It is happening in women's sports. I mean, men and women winning the women's weightlifting. It is
swimming.
Swimming. Yeah. Oh, it's all going on. AFL.
What would you feel if Usain Bolt suddenly identified as a woman?
That's a ridiculous question.
Oh,
and you know
why?
it is. Come on, that's
Why?
silly. Because you can't wake up tomorrow morning and decide that you're a woman and start competing.
It's literally what Leah Thomas has done.
It takes 2 years. In the UK, it takes 2 years.
It takes 1 year to qualify in athletics, right? So Usain Bolt could potentially, within a year, with a bit of reduced testosterone treatment, he could sprint against women.
A huge reduction in testosterone.
Yeah.
A huge.
It makes no difference to body mass or size or power.
But it would
or speed.
It would alter everything.
So would you be fine with that?
If he suddenly did, if that's...
You respect his right to be
ridiculous.
a woman. It's not ridiculous. It is ridiculous, but not for the reasons you think. Because it could happen. And you think it's fair.
That's obscene. That is obscene.
Would you be happy if Usain Bolt identified as a woman and began winning the races against women by 2 seconds?
You're making an extreme argument out of what are people's lives.
It's happening with Leah Thomas.
But I think what everyday Australians don't realise is the danger of those laws, because women have single-sex spaces for a reason.
Yes.
Because women need some space and safety and fairness and dignity. And when it comes to myself, I'm taking the Hobart City Council to Discrimination Tribunal because I asked the council in my personal capacity to book the Town Hall Ballroom for a women's rights and free speech event.
Right, okay.
Yes.
And how'd that go?
I asked for a date in November. And long story short, I was told there was no dates in November. Not a single date was available. And I was like, okay, this seems a bit iffy.
Yep.
Yes. And sure enough, someone else I know happened to ask for a date in November for their handcrafts fair, for their knitting and their crochet. They were able to get a date, no problem at all.
So they just saw your name in the email and they said, nope,
they saw the name,
can't have a room.
Women's rights, free speech, and I have strong evidence in writing that there was a deliberate strategy to block my booking of the town hall. It was widely known and executed throughout the organisation. I've lodged a complaint with Tasmanian Discrimination Commissioner. Mm-hmm. The tables have turned in this one.
Yep.
That's why I do believe there is a rightful place for discrimination laws, because I have been discriminated, in my opinion, on the basis of political belief, political activity and association.
And once again, those political beliefs is that women are women and men are men. That's basically it.
Yes. So in summary, essentially the Hobart City Council saw a women's rights free speech event and a strategy was devised to block me from booking Town Hall. Oh, the irony.
Now, Louise, we originally agreed to meet at the Town Hall, but we're not there today. We're forced to relocate. Now, can you briefly tell us why that?
That's part of the impact of my suspension. Mm-hmm. So amongst other things, I'm not allowed to use a councillor title, I'm not allowed to represent the community, undertake council activities, I'm not allowed to be in council premises, which I'm hoping that a magistrates court judge will see the injustice of that and that suspension.
So they've gone out of their way to keep an elected councillor away from council buildings.
Yes, well the thing is that I have shown that I have a backbone and I won't be bullied. The bullying that I think, in my opinion, I've experienced for the past 18 months has been relentless and escalating. I think this tactic is now from some of the political opponents that wish I would just be quiet and toe the line. That I even have a letter from the Hobart City Council Deputy Mayor that says you have publicly refuted that trans women are women. Yes, I have, and I will continue to do so. So I think the new strategy is to get Louise sacked through multiple code of conducts.
Through lawfare. Using
Again,
the law
yeah.
against you.
A strategy I'm now
against
familiar
the
with.
spirit of the law, but twisting it to fit their particular narrative.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
these laws have an absolute rightful time and place. Inciting hatred, atrocious. Inciting violence, never. There is a rightful place for those things, but they should be used sparingly. I mean, an example, in Australia, we have sadly cases of true incitement of hatred and violence.
Yes.
That's what these laws are for. They're not for shutting up women or anyone that has a fair, valid opinion just because some people don't like it.
Louise, thank you very much.
That's all right. Well, thank you for having me.